Tonight, before you sleep, you will probably perform a ritual no ancient person could have imagined. You may check a glowing screen, set an alarm precise to the minute, lock a manufactured door, and lie down in a room that remains warm, cool, bright, or dark at the touch of a button. To us, bedtime feels private and ordinary. To much of the ancient world, it was neither. Night was not simply the end of the day. It was a border crossing. The moment the sun vanished, the familiar world changed. A harmless road became invisible. A courtyard could hide a snake. A distant sound might be a thief, an animal, or something the mind could not name. There were no streetlights across the horizon and no emergency number beside the bed. Darkness entered the house, swallowed color, and reduced the world to whatever could fit inside the weak circle of a flame. So bedtime often began long before anyone lay down. Animals were enclosed, tools were collected, water was stored, doors were barred, food was covered. The household fire was preserved because making flame again could be difficult. An oil lamp might extend the evening, but fuel had value. Every extra hour of light consumed something the family would need tomorrow. And this is where the story gets strange. Ancient people did not simply go to bed. Their final waking moments could be part security inspection, part family gathering, part religious ceremony, and part negotiation with invisible forces. There was no single ancient bedtime. A farmer, a soldier, an enslaved worker, a merchant, and a king could live beneath the same sky and experience completely different nights. Seasons mattered. Wealth mattered. The moon mattered. In winter, darkness arrived early and stayed for what must have felt like an enormous stretch of time. One night could occupy nearly half the day, while a human life lasted only a few dozen winters. In ancient Egypt, sleep left behind physical evidence. Wealthier Egyptians could sleep on raised beds, while many others slept on mats. Instead of soft pillows, Egyptians used curved headrests that supported the neck and lifted the head. Surviving examples date back thousands of years. They look uncomfortable to modern eyes, yet they were practical objects, and some carried protective meaning. The sleeping body was vulnerable, and the head was worth guarding. But protecting the body was only half the problem. What entered the mind during sleep could matter even more. Egyptians recorded dream interpretations, dividing visions into good and bad signs. One surviving dream manual associated with Khenur-Khepshef dates to around 1220 BCE. To its readers, a nightmare was not merely the brain producing random images. It could be information arriving from beyond ordinary waking life. Imagine a small Egyptian home after sunset. The lamp is fading. The air still carries the heat of the day. Someone settles onto a mat. A child whispers about a noise outside. An adult repeats a protective phrase. Then the room becomes too dark to see a face. The next world they expect to enter is not empty. It is filled with gods, ancestors, omens, and messages. Farther east, in ancient Mesopotamia, sunset also carried religious meaning. Texts describe prayers connected with the sun god Shamash returning to his dwelling at the end of the day. Mesopotamian life was surrounded by omens, rituals, and protective magic. A troubling dream, a strange sound, or sudden illness could signal danger that had to be interpreted and sometimes countered. That means bedtime could include words spoken against fear. Incantations, prayers, and protective objects gave people a sense that the household was not defenseless. Today, we may call this superstition. But stand inside a mud brick house 4,000 years ago, with no electric light and no scientific explanation for nightmares, infection, or sleep paralysis. The boundary between spiritual danger and physical danger would not feel obvious. Then came the Greeks, who turned sleep into something even more extraordinary. In sanctuaries dedicated to Asclepius, the god of healing, some sick people practiced what is now called dream incubation. After ritual preparation, they slept in a sacred space hoping to receive a dream connected with healing or divine guidance. Sleep was not an interruption of treatment. Sleep was part of the treatment. Picture someone entering such a sanctuary after traveling for days with an illness nobody could explain. They wash, they pray. They lie down among strangers beneath the presence of a god. Around them are stories of others who dreamed, awakened, and claimed to be healed. The person closes their eyes not to escape reality, but to search for an answer inside a dream. But most people did not sleep in temples. They slept in crowded homes. Families could share rooms. Children slept near adults. Servants or enslaved people might sleep near work areas. Bedding could be simple and portable. Breathing, coughing, animals, insects, neighbors, and the street formed the soundtrack of night. Ancient Rome made this contrast sharp. In a wealthy house, someone might withdraw behind walls with servants nearby. In a crowded apartment, the night could remain noisy and dangerous. Lamps smoked, streets echoed, fires were feared. Somewhere in the city, bakers and laborers began working while others were still trying to sleep. Night did not silence civilization. It changed who was awake. And then there is the question people still argue about. Did ancient humans sleep twice each night? Research on later pre-industrial societies found references to a first sleep and a second sleep, separated by a period of wakefulness. During that interval, people might pray, talk, or tend the fire. In a famous experiment, researcher Thomas Weyer exposed participants to 14 hours of darkness each night. Their sleep gradually divided into two main periods with wakefulness between them. It sounds like proof that modern sleep is unnatural, but that is not the whole story. Later scholars warned that the evidence is more mixed than the popular version suggests. Segmented sleep may have occurred in certain places, seasons, and conditions, but we cannot declare that every ancient society followed one universal pattern. The more interesting truth is that human sleep can reshape itself around darkness, labor, safety, and expectation. That flexibility reveals what ancient people were really doing before bed. They were preparing not just to rest, but to surrender control. For hours, they would be unable to guard possessions, watch children, defend the fire, or understand what their own minds were showing them. So they built rituals around that surrender. They checked the door, they gathered close. They preserved the flame, they spoke to gods. They watched the sky. They told stories that placed one fragile household inside a universe crowded with meaning. And now, thousands of years later, darkness has almost disappeared. Our rooms glow. Our streets glow. Screens follow us beneath the blankets. We no longer ask a priest to interpret every nightmare, yet many people search the internet the moment they wake from one. We no longer fear that the fire will die before morning, yet we feel uneasy when a battery reaches 1%. The technology changed, the ritual remained. Every night you still perform a final sequence of actions before allowing consciousness to disappear. You check what matters, you place danger at a distance, you search for reassurance. Then you lie motionless, trusting that the world will still be there when you return. The strangest part is that an ancient Egyptian, a Mesopotamian farmer, a Greek pilgrim, and you would understand that final moment perfectly. However different the room, the bed, the prayer, or the fear, everyone eventually reaches the same edge. The light fades. The known world loosens its grip. And for a few silent hours, the most powerful creature on earth becomes as vulnerable as it was at the beginning of history.